Part 2, The Connection, Chapter 1. The aftermath of rain's morning after the storm, Newark seemed washed raw, as though the city had shed a skin. The air carried a brightness unusual for early spring, crisp and cool, with puddles scattered. Like small mirrors across the sidewalks, Anna Collins lingered longer than usual in bed, staring at the faint lines of light sneaking through her blinds. On the knitstand beside her lay the sketch of her own face that she swore she hadn't taken from Mark's notebook. Yet there it was, edges curled from the damp, the faint charcoal strokes hauntingly familiar. Her first thought had been that Mark had somehow slipped it into her bag, but she hadn't seen him after he'd walked her home. Her second thought that she had unconsciously stolen it frightened her more. She wasn't the kind of person who took things, numbers and order defined her. Her whole life was built on predictability, control, but nothing about this felt controlled. She pressed her fingertips lightly over the paper, half expecting it to dissolve. Instead, the page remained solid, real, anchoring her to questions she didn't know how to ask. By the time she forced herself out of bed, Anna already knew she would see him again. Fate, it seemed, had no patience for hesitation that same evening. As she left the grocery store balancing a paper bag of basics, milk, bread, coffee, she nearly collided with him again. Twice in 1 week, Mark said, stepping back just in time to keep her from spilling everything onto the cracked pavement. His smile was wry, but his eyes seemed almost relieved. Anna felt her throat tighten. "Are you following me?" "Maybe," he said. Then, with a shrug, "Or maybe Newark is smaller than it looks." She wanted to be annoyed, but the absurdity of it made her laugh instead. Mark reached to take the grocery bag from her arms before she could protest, and together they walked the 3 blocks to her apartment. Along the way, he pointed out things. She had never noticed an abandoned storefront window where someone had painted a mural of the river, a cracked stone arch hidden behind ivy, a rooftop garden glimpsed between buildings. "How do you see all this?" she asked. "I don't," he answered. "It sees me. I just pay attention." Anna shook her head, but inside something stirred. She had lived in Newark for nearly a decade, yet she had never seen it like this, alive, strange, worth noticing. When they reached her building, Mark handed her the bag, lingering on the stoop as though uncertain if he should leave. "Coffee?" she asked before she could change her mind, and just like that, he stepped inside her world. They sat at her small kitchen table, mugs steaming between them. Anna's apartment was tidy to the point of sterility, white walls, neatly stacked bills. A fridge that hummed too loudly. She suddenly saw it through his eyes, colorless, lifeless, nothing at all like the vivid chaos of his sketchbook. "You live like you're afraid of mess," Mark observed, his gaze moving over the spotless counters. She bristled. "I like things in order. Order is good," he conceded. "But sometimes mess is where the truth hides." The words lingered, unsettling her in ways she didn't want to admit. They talked late into the evening about music, about the absurdity of tax codes, about the way the city skyline looked at night from the Pulaski Skyway. At some point, the groceries were forgotten, the coffee grew cold, and Anna realized she hadn't checked her phone in hours. When Mark finally left, the apartment didn't feel quite so empty, and Anna, lying awake that night, found herself clutching the sketch on her knitstand once more. Chapter 2, City of Hidden Corners. Over the next 2 weeks, Anna and Mark became unlikely companions. They explored Newark the way children might explore a secret garden, restless, curious, unafraid to wander into forgotten corners. Mark seemed to know every back alley, every cracked mural, every place where beauty survived in spite of neglect. One evening, he took her to Riverfront Park. The sky was a burnished orange, the Passaic River carrying the last glow of sunset. They sat on the stone steps, their shoulders nearly touching, the city's hum softened by distance. "Why here?" Anna asked. Mark's gaze swept the river. "Because this place remembers. Look at the water. It carries every reflection, but none of them last, just like us." She frowned. "That sounds depressing." "It's not," he said gently. "It means nothing ever really disappears." The heart remembers even when the mind forgets. The phrase struck her like a quiet chord. She turned away, hiding the sudden heat in her chest. They walked back through the ironbound district, where Portuguese restaurants spilled music and the smell of garlic into the streets. Mark bought them cheap pastries from a bakery, and they ate them on the curb, laughing when powdered sugar clung to their clothes. For once, Anna forgot the weight she always carried, yet in the quiet moments, in the hush between laughter, in the shadows where his eyes lingered too long, she felt the undercurrent of something dangerous. She was letting him in, and she wasn't. Sure, she knew how to survive that again. One night, when thunder rolled low above the city, Anna finally let him inside. They sat on the floor of her living room, surrounded by stacks of books. Mark pulled one at random, a worn collection of Pablo Neruda's poems, and began to read aloud. His voice was uneven at first, but as he spoke, it grew steadier, carrying the words like music. When he finished, the silence between them was unbearable. His hand brushed hers, and this time neither of them moved away. Anna's pulse hammered. She whispered, almost against her will, "Do you ever feel like this was supposed to happen?" Mark studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "Every damn day since I met you." The world tilted. Chapter 3. Breaking the silence, airing came again to Newark, this time in steady sheets that blurred the streetlights into halos. The city seemed muffled, wrapped in a curtain of water that softened the edges of everything. Anna liked it that way. Rain made the world quieter, easier to hold at arm's length, but tonight she wasn't alone with the sound. Mark stood at her window, tracing rivulets of water with his fingertip on the glass. He hadn't said much since arriving, only shrug off his damp jacket, left his sketchbook on the coffee table, and let the silence stretch. Anna watched him from the sofa, nerves prickling. She knew something lingered beneath his quiet. He carried his secrets the way he carried his art, close, guarded, as if revealing too much would shatter him. Finally, she asked, "What's wrong?" He turned, shadows playing across his face. "Nothing," she frowned. "You're a terrible liar." His smile was fleeting. He came to sit beside her, close enough that she could smell the rain in his hair, the faint scent of charcoal on his hands. For a long moment, he just looked at her, as though debating with himself. Then he whispered, "You scare me." The words stole her breath. "Me?" Mark nodded. "Because you make me want to stop running, and I don't know if I can." Anna's chest tightened. Running from what? But he shook his head, gaze falling to his hands. "That's not a story for tonight." The unspoken truth hung heavy. Anna wanted to demand answers, but something in his eyes held her back, a woundedness she recognized all too well. She knew what it meant to carry ghosts. She thought of her own, of Daniel. It had been nearly 6 years since the accident, but the memory still cleaved her in half when she let it. The screech of tires, the shattering glass, the way time fractured. In a single heartbeat, Daniel's laughter silenced forever, his hand torn from hers. Since then, she had built walls. Numbers, routines, silence, anything to keep from drowning in what she'd lost. And now, here was Mark, pressing against those walls without even trying. "Do you want to know why I scare myself?" she asked, her voice unsteady. He looked up, surprised. "Because you make me feel like I might still be alive." Mark's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand, tentative at first, then firmer when she didn't pull away. His palm was warm, calloused, grounding. They sat like that for a long time, listening to the rain hammer the city. In the days that followed, something shifted between them. Their conversations dug deeper, moving beyond art and numbers into the raw places they rarely showed anyone. Mark confessed pieces of his past in fragments: his father's absence, his mother's long battles with addiction, the nights he spent on friends' couches when home wasn't safe. Anna, in turn, spoke Daniel's name aloud for the first time in years. She told Mark about the way love had once been simple, effortless, until tragedy rewrote her life. She expected pity, but Mark gave her none. Only quiet presence, steady and unflinching. One evening, they ended up in his studio, a drafty loft. Above an old warehouse near Broad Street, the walls were splattered with paint, canvases stacked in uneven piles. The place smelled of turpentine and dust, but to Mark it was sacred ground. "This is where I disappear," he said, leading her inside. Anna walked slowly, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of his creations. Faces stared back at her from every canvas, strangers, shadows, fragments of dreams. And in more than one painting, she saw herself. Her throat tightened. "How long have you been drawing me?" Mark hesitated. "Since before we met." The confession sent a shiver through her. "That doesn't make sense." "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I'd see you in dreams, in passing faces, in the way light fell on empty streets. I thought I was inventing you. Then I found you." Standing in the rain, Anna's pulse stumbled. "That's not possible." Mark's eyes met hers, steady. "And yet, here you are." "That night," she stayed. The loft was cold, the mattress on the floor thinner than comfort allowed, but Anna found herself tangled in sheets with him, her skin humming with the terrifying wonder of touch. His breath against her collarbone, his hands tracing the lines of her as though memorizing her into existence. It was more than desire. It was recognition. Afterward, she lay awake, watching him sleep. Shadows moved across his face, softening him into something almost boyish. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope, but hope was dangerous because love, she knew, could be lost in an instant. The next morning, she found a note slipped beneath her coffee mug. "Don't forget who you are when I'm not here." The words struck her harder than they should have. What did he mean? Why did it feel like both a promise and a warning? She folded the note into her pocket, carrying it like a secret charm, but deep down, Anna sensed it. Shadows were gathering, and not all of them belonged to the past. Chapter 4. Shadows in the light spring deepened in Newark, the air carrying both blossoms and the grit of the city. Life moved forward in its unrelenting rhythm, subways groaning, markets bustling, the skyline sharpening against longer days. Yet for Anna and Mark, time had begun to bend, folding around their moments together like the city itself conspired to give them space. They met in odd places, a corner booth at a Portuguese cafe, the quiet alcove of the Newark Public Library, the steps leading down to Branch Brook Park. Each meeting felt both planned and accidental, as though fate kept nudging them closer. Anna found herself smiling more often, laughing in ways she had thought lost to her. Mark's world bled into her sketches, fragments of poetry, the strange ways he saw beauty in brokenness. She, in turn, grounded him with her precision, her stubborn routines that somehow softened in his presence. It should have been simple. But nothing about it was. One evening, they wandered into the Cathedral Basilica of the Sacred Heart, its Gothic towers rising like stone guardians against the twilight. Anna had never been inside despite living in Newark for years, but Mark insisted. The vast interior swallowed them whole. High arches, stained glass throwing fractured light across marble floors, silence so profound it bordered on holy. Anna stood, transfixed, her breath catching at the sheer scale. "It's overwhelming." Mark's voice was hushed. "That's the point." They sat in a pew near the back. Mark tilted his head, eyes following the kaleidoscope of colors bleeding from the windows. "Do you believe in God?" Anna asked softly. Mark was quiet a long time. Then, "I believe in something. Maybe not what everyone else calls him, but I believe in connections. That we're tied to people we don't even know yet, that some part of us remembers before we do." Anna's chest tightened. "You mean like destiny?" He smiled faintly. "Or madness. Take your pick." She wanted to dismiss it, but the word destiny clung to her, whispering at the edges of her thoughts. Later, as they walked home through dimly lit streets, Mark grew restless. His jokes were shorter, his silences heavier. By the time they reached her apartment, he seemed miles away. Anna touched his arm. "Talk to me." He shook his head, forcing a smile. "Not tonight, Mark." but he kissed her quickly, almost desperately, and left before she could press further. When she closed the door behind him, the apartment felt colder than it had in weeks. The following days brought distance. Mark disappeared into a studio, answering her texts hours late, sometimes not at all. When she did see him, his eyes were shadowed, his words edged with something she couldn't name. Anna told herself not to panic. He was an artist, prone to moods, but the unease grew, gnawing at her in quiet hours. One night, she walked to his studio unannounced. The loft door was ajar, dim light spilling out. Inside, she found him hunched over a canvas, brush in hand, sweat dampening his shirt. He didn't notice her at first. Mark. She whispered. He startled, dropping the brush. His eyes widened, guilt flashing before he masked it with a smile. Anna, you scared me, but she had already seen it, the painting. On the easel. It was her face again, but different this time. Shadows devoured the features, eyes hollowed, mouth slightly parted in something between grief and terror. The image sent a chill through her. Why would you paint me like this? She asked, voice trembling. Mark ran a hand through his hair. It's not you. Not exactly. It's what I'm afraid of losing. Anna swallowed hard. You're not making sense. He reached for her, but she stepped back. Anna, please. Some things I can't explain yet. Her pulse hammered. Then when? Because I can't keep guessing where I stand in your world. Mark's face crumpled. For a heartbeat, she thought he might finally tell her everything. But instead, he turned away, shoulders tense. Soon, he said, I promise. The word felt like both a gift and a lie. Days later, Anna found the letter. It was tucked between the pages of her Neruda book, the same one he had read aloud weeks ago. She didn't remember putting it there. The handwriting was his. Anna, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't brave enough to tell you in person. There are things about me you don't know, things I've hidden because I didn't want to lose what we have, but shadows catch up to everyone. They found me again. Please remember this. You were never an accident. Meeting you was the only thing that ever felt inevitable. If I disappear, it won't mean I didn't care. It will mean I cared too much to let you drown with me. And the page blurred as tears filled her eyes. Her hands shook, her chest constricted. She read it again and again, hoping the words might change, that the ending might vanish. But it remained, stark and final. That night, Anna sat at her kitchen table, the letter spread before her like a wound. The city outside pressed against the windows, restless and unfeeling. For the first time since Daniel's death, she felt the old fear rise, the terror of losing someone she had only just begun to love. She clutched the letter to her chest, whispering into the empty room, don't you dare leave me. But the shadows were already gathering, and deep down, Anna knew part of the story had only just begun. End of Part 2. The Connection.